Hello, hello. Hi. Number two. Hello. No? Okay. Hello, hello, Thea. Hello, Zazie. I'm not sure if anyone else will join online. More people were supposed to be there. Hi, Stephen. So we have with us three of the filmmakers for Your Tongue in My Cheek program. We have Stephen Wardle for Caitlin Describes a Crisis. We have Thea Chung, who did Contacto y Probando, and Zazie Ray Trapido, Language Decay, so far. um, okay, I would like to start watching these films together again and on the big screen. Um, there is a strong sense of play and experimentation in these films, um, trying things out, testing things, using play as communicating through play. I'm wondering, what role does play and experimentation have in your practice as filmmakers? And maybe as a follow-up question, how did you end up with this formal approach for your film? Yeah.
Sure. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in
Double
such.
mic.
Is this working?
Yeah, a
Hello.
little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in really great company. And I hope I can speak for my siblings as they would like me to, because the film I'm presenting was a very collaborative project. And I guess that gets to your answer as well. The way that we made the film was through a series of improvisatory discussions and um, shoots. Maybe you might call them play sessions. So the whole process was very playful, and I think the the way that I'm filming my siblings is uh, a very I have a very protective methodology. Like, I want to protect them. And so I think by co-authoring the film with them and giving them um, the autonomy to build a narrative and play at building that narrative gives them a sort of way of it allows them to protect themselves a little bit and protect things that they might not want to share on camera.
Thea, would you like to talk about this?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks to Sarah, Louisa, Kurt, and everyone else who has come to see the films, and the other filmmakers in this block. I also, like Stephen said, feel like I'm in very wonderful company. Um, yeah, I mean, I think so much of this particular film for me was the play element, play as practice involved, following the lead of all of these young girls, sisters, and cousins who are sort of have this force and this gravity. And I was swept up into their orbit, and I got to film with them for a very long period of time. And I think my role in the way that they engage with me and at other times completely forgot me, allowed for me to sort of mutate in my role as a sort of co-player in their reality. And so I think most of it was really just following following their lead and being at eye level with them and being close to them, because they let me be, and remembering what it is to be a kid again through slipping into their way of seeing. Um, and then just in my process, I give so much form and shape and try so many things, um, while I'm shooting and then while I'm editing. I think it's also sort of a very exploratory process, and the footage itself and my time with them only encourage that exploration more.
Yes.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and thanks for everyone that saw the film, and my fellow filmmakers in this program. I think for this particular film, it's with somebody that I know so well, and I think when you have a familiarity with someone, it's so easy to just be playful with them. And I think it's my grandmother, so I see her as like a big playmate. I think since I was a little kid, so I think certain people bring uh, these ways of working out of you. I think whether you're conscious of it or not. Um, and so I think with this piece, she was a big part of me figuring out what kind of films I wanted to make because she was someone that I could just experiment with, like, oh, like, make a portrait film of a person and, like, I don't know, see what comes out of it. And like she was a big part of me learning about the form, just because she is someone that I'm very close to and who was there. And I think it's always good to have that, uh, to become comfortable as a filmmaker in this way was a very fortunate thing for me. And then to kind of develop a voice, and this was um, footage that I was able to come back to, and also when I had like a little bit more developed voice and just experiment and find that playfulness again, because I think it's so easy to sometimes just take things so seriously, and you lose that sense of play and experimentation so quickly. And I think by returning to something that you have this familiarity with and to try to see it again through editing was a way that to try and get that back, or to try to find that like experimental, playful voice, and to also remember that in my practice, it's not something that goes away, but it's something that I think you forget about. So I think it's easy. Yeah, I think with this film, it was definitely returning to that sense of play and experimentation and just appreciating that form and language that can come out of that. It's kind of like almost like an early language that has so much to it, but you don't take it, so you take it for granted, I think, because um, I don't know, you want to say bigger things, or I don't know, but sometimes I think returning to this more like elemental state of being, can bring out some really nice things.
Yeah, thank you. This made me think of some words that I think we included in the program description, but I think I read them in Thea's description of her film. And when she mentioned that she wanted to capture the language of care among the girls and the family. And I was wondering if we could consider maybe witnessing or filming someone as an act of care, and where does care stand in your, yeah, filmmaking practice? And maybe, and you responded a little bit to that, all of you, but maybe if we can delve a little bit more into this idea of using a caring gaze rather than an extractive one when we make films. Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk about that. Well, I really love my younger siblings. My parents started adopting children through foster care when I was growing up. And so I was there with them helping raise my younger siblings as I was growing up. And then when this is a sort of roundabout way to answer it, but just also a description of the context of the film. So when I became 18, I went no contact with my parents because of the way they treated me in a sort of like fundamentalist Christian context when I came out to them. And so about 8 years ago, I started making films with my family as a method of reconnection. And so I wanted to reconnect with my younger siblings, and the only way to do that was to sort of repair what had been lost. And so these films are really like, instead of kind of documenting the trauma and like that sort of context that I'm trying to move past, it's sort of like a retrieval of what's been lost. And I guess with this film in particular, it's just another iteration of this expression of care I have for my younger siblings. They've taught me so much about life and how to live, and how to experience joy and gratitude. And so working with them to make a film is just like one way to sort of thank them and express care with them. And it gives us something to do together to sort of share and express care for each other.
Thank you. Yeah.
I can go next. I mean, I thank you for pulling out this phrase. It's one I think about a lot in terms of methodology. I think so much of in this particular film, the act of working with the camera generally is so relational, and part of the play of it is constantly changing your method and your approach through cues and patience and time spent with the people that you're shooting with. And I think in this sense, so much of the care came for me through sort of participation and complicity in a very complex world, and in the sort of world of girls, and these sisters and cousins. And yeah, I mean, I think also treating that as a very sort of autonomous and sovereign world, and one that I increasingly sort of fell into over time. I think I initially had wanted to film the sort of adults, the mother and grandmother figure, and in this family, and then realized that there was this other very sort of rich parallel world to the girls that I really wanted to focus on. And so I think in my actual shooting as well, it's focusing on sort of duration is really important to me, and being very patient in the actual shooting, so that you're noticing sort of gestures, and in my film, noting language of care, and then in being completely sort of enveloped in participating in that world, and being flexible to change and method in that world. Yeah, I think you sort of, at least I always hope in my work that the images and the time spent with those people become an expression of care, as Stephen had said.
Yeah, I agree. I think spending so much time with people and really having a genuine interest and desire to connect that goes, I think like the film becomes like such a little fraction of those relationships, and it's hard to figure out like what that fraction is saying or telling. But I think that sorry, a dog might start barking. But I don't know. I've found that filming people who are close to me or who are around me is just a way of like, it's another language. Like it becomes a language of art, of expression, of like finding ways to connect to somebody rather than using it as taking something from them. I think it can be a way of finding connection and making deeper relationships, um, and also understanding somebody better and seeing them in a different way. Like I would never have thought about my grandmother in this way, in this context, if it weren't for making this film about her. And it's just something that kind of fell out of that. So I think it can be a like a bridge to understanding somebody better, seeing somebody outside of that initial like one-on-one perspective, because that's, sorry if you hear the dog, just what art can be for. And again, I was lucky to have this person in front of me who's basically just willing to do anything I say for the sake of art and like supporting me. And so I guess that it's kind of cheating this question a little bit, but it's definitely like when you have such a deep connection with somebody, filming it, I don't think it feels extractive. It just feels like part of your exploration and growth and formation as a human being, and they can be part of that and you can bring them into it, and it becomes, I think, collaborative by nature.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to open it up to the audience. Are there any questions for the filmmaker. We also have we have Sam here, who directed Learning from Las Vegas, who also edited Casino. So the first film that you watched, he happens to be here. And if you have questions regarding that film, he can probably respond to that. So any questions? Yes. Let's wait for the mic so people online can hear as well.
I have a question for Stephen. From what I understand, this is the third one in the series, right, with your siblings. So I'm curious how maybe their relationship to film has changed. You know, do they see themselves as like co-creators and filmmakers themselves? How has that journey? You mentioned a little bit about this being this like relational journey, and how has that changed this one compared to the previous projects?
Yeah, thanks for your question. So I started making this series about 8 years ago, and this is indeed the third in the series, of which maybe this is the last one, or maybe there will be many more. I don't know. I think I would love it if they cared more about film, but they really just are like, they just want to hang out. So they're pretty easily distracted and not interested in spending like all day shooting. So I have to do things like provide lots of snacks and like give them, I don't know, like rides to places they want to go. I think in terms of my relationship with my family, though, these films have really changed the way that I relate to my siblings, maybe more as equals. And it's also allowed me to sort of restructure the way that I connect with my parents. And I think they have come to really like these films as well and see them as a sort of chronicle of our family. And so in terms of like how I relate to my family and how we all relate to each other, these films have sort of rebuilt this thing that I initially had just set out to sort of create as a fantasy.
Hey, Taya, it's Chris. I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit more about how your thinking evolved in terms of your process as you got to know this family, as you filmed this family, and just how maybe where it started and what led you to the film being what it is.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Chris. It's a great question. I spent sort of an entire summer working on this project, and followed the sort of rhythms. I spent a long time with this family before I even started filming with them, and I met them through some very close friends. And the first time I did end up shooting with the girls, I remember feeling like I had to do very little with my camera. We were sort of in a back field together, and it felt like everything was sort of unraveling before us. That I suddenly, the girls, even just in their movement and their minds, converge in a particular moment and then disperse, and sort of choosing when to follow one or the other. Sort of became instinct with time. But I mean, so much of the way that this film unraveled and my process developed, I would say it didn't even involve the camera at times, and it was so sort of to the language of Carol. So I think it's important to know when to, have your camera off and have relationships develop outside of the actual shooting that then change the shooting itself. But I would say the structure of shooting was like going on adventures every day. And yeah, I think I sort of maybe got closer with time, and my interest in sort of how they just the opening shot of the film is the girls discovering in the river and discovering sort of what they think to be gold in the river. And so I think so much of it was first an attentiveness to the way they discovered things, and then many shots in the sort of latter half of the film are also my discovery through the lens in the viewfinder, in a sort of different way. So yeah, I think the structure of the film I had no idea until I was editing, and that was sort of a very long, drawn out process of figuring out sort of a very loose structure that allowed for everything in the particular context and the way that we spent time together to come through them and through their eyes.
Okay, one last question. Thank you, there.
Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for the films. And maybe as a way to extend earlier to questions, I'm curious about the moments of the threshold where you move from this directorial sort of plan or ethnographic sort of ideas going in. I mean, all artists have sort of a hunch or plan before any project, even if a collaborative one. But I would like to hear a little bit about, and this is an open question to all three of you, but when you realized that you are now in a complicit place where now you are following the artfulness of your subject's lead and their perhaps more ambitious or unwieldy, unruly ways of directing, pulling you into their world or gravity.
I guess I can answer that. And I, when you were talking, I was just I was thinking about how my film really isn't traditionally ethnographic at all, because it's so improvised and narrative based. It's sort of it's a portrait of my siblings making a narrative film. And so in that sense, I think I was trying to do exactly what you're describing, where I was trying to like give them as much autonomy in steering the production as possible. So I was trying to like remove myself, except as a sort of editorial voice, to be like, maybe it makes more sense to like film over here because you can see such and such. So just as a sort of advisory role. And in that way, the film really took off in a way that's also very difficult to sort of tackle post-production. But then like after spending a long time with the film is sort of like this process-based generative thing emerges that has its own language beyond ethnography, and it sort of is like this emergent language that comes from the thing that they wanted to make.
Yeah, I think with this, I had shot it a while back, and then kind of re-looking at the footage and opening it up again, you kind of see those instincts that maybe you really ignore the first time around, and just in a way like letting, I think a big part of the editing is like letting the footage speak for itself and letting the imperfections and the mistakes and the things that you otherwise would maybe not want to show be part of the language of communicating who this person is and trying to find the authenticity in who they are and also in your relationship to them. And I think in this case it really worked in my favor, because I think when you have somebody who's so their energy is all over the place in a good way, these, like the way that film works, I think having like these layers of time show itself is was kind of what allowed me to lead, I guess, in this case, which but yeah, I think a lot of the times those like mistakes or those first instincts or those fumblings when you're making a film and don't necessarily have a plan, sometimes it's, I think that can be a very good lead or a way to allow the things that maybe you'd want to cover up kind of shape the film and let the person come out and not worry about the I guess the presentation of it.
I guess I'll just add on quickly. I think complicity was so central to the making of these images. In the subtitling process, I was figuring out how much to involve sort of callbacks to me or my name, which came up a lot. I don't know if some of you caught it, but I think that so much of the complicity in the sort of submitting to these much larger plots and games and sort of inventions that are unraveling before the camera. It's already felt in the images that I'm very sort of strung into these plots, and so I very often didn't feel like a leader of the troupe, but rather one that was just trying to often figure out how to frame or even keep up with so much of the sort of quick development of things, and yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your work. Thank you. Don't forget to come back at 7:45. We will announce the award winners of Mimesis.